The Orient is an imaginal construction, an ensemble of representations from which everyone picks what they like wherever they are. Hi everyone, my name's Agnes, and this is going to be a review of Compass by Mathias Énard. This was translated from the French by Charlotte Mandel. And Énard has studied Persian and Arabic and has spent long periods of time in the Middle East. And this is his latest novel exploring the relationship between the East and the West. The novel follows Franz Ritter, an Austrian musicologist who suffers from insomnia and an unspecified illness. And the novel basically spans only one sleepless night when Franz is reflecting on his past adventures in the Middle East and the people that he encountered during his journeys, specifically focusing on a fellow scholar named Sarah, whose research centers around female Orientalists and with whom Franz has a very complicated relationship. Franz also is interested in Orientalism, but related to the field of music. He writes essays on the influence of Middle Eastern music on Western composers. So the book is full of references to various pieces of classical music. At its core, the book explores Europe's fascination with the Middle East throughout history, and it looks at many famous Orientalists. It challenges the idea of the East as something enigmatic and other, in contrast to Western culture. By using many examples, the author shows that Europe has always been influenced by Middle Eastern culture. Moreover, he goes on to suggest that Europe is a cosmopolitan construct and that the division between East and West is essentially imaginary. He goes into very detailed analysis, tracing the progress of these influences from artist to artist, and while it's fascinating, at some points it does become a bit tiring. This is a very dense and intellectual novel, and its structure kind of reminded me of Proust. It also contains some direct and indirect references to Proust's In Search of Lost Time, like in this passage where Franz Ritter is visiting an exhibition in Tehran of anatomical models from the 18th century that were made for the training of army surgeons. He says, "I imagined almost 2 centuries earlier the young doctors in training discovering this body of wax. Why think about these things before falling asleep? Much better to imagine a mother's kiss on your forehead, that tenderness you wait for at night that never comes, rather than anatomical mannequins open up from clavicle to abdomen." So yeah, he's clearly read In Search of Lost Time. I wouldn't compare the author's prose to Proust, but it also has an unusual rhythm that is hard to get into at first, but once you surrender to the prose, I think it takes you on a fascinating journey through intellectual labyrinths of music, literature, and art, and it takes you to places that you didn't even know you wanted to visit. The narrative is very meandering and fragmented, and it requires your undivided attention as the author indulges in taking you on various seemingly unimportant tangents. Like at one point, Franz goes on a tirade against Wagner that I thought was very amusing. And despite its complexity, I think it's a fascinating journey into Franz Ritter's memories and his love story with the Middle East. I kind of feel like the book deserves to win the Man Booker International Prize just for the sheer courage to try to adapt this Proustian structure. I think this book definitely won't have a universal appeal, but for the right reader who is willing to devote quite a lot of time on a book where nothing much happens, I think it could be a special and rewarding reading experience. And if you would like to immerse yourself even more into the book, I'd suggest Googling and listening to the various pieces of classical music that Franz Ritter is referencing. I'm actually quite conflicted about this book because despite the thought-provoking ideas and topics that the author covers in this book, and as you can see I've marked quite a lot of paragraphs, I was starting to think, is this actually a good novel? Because there's no plot or character development, and apart from Franz and Sarah, The characters mostly just enter and just as quickly disappear from the story, and we don't really get to know Franz or Sarah either. It kind of felt like I was reading an academic thesis mixed with journal entries. Moreover, the novel includes many pictures of documents, like you can see here, and extracts from Sarah's research papers, various works of literature, and even lengthy emails between Franz and Sarah. On the other hand, I was really emotionally moved by some of the passages, and that's not usually characteristic to something like a cultural essay. So, my question is, was the point of the novel a celebration of erudition, or is it a chronicle of the love hate relationship between the East and the West throughout history? Or maybe it's a disguised political rant? I'm not really sure, so if you've read this or you're currently reading it, let me know your thoughts. Anyway, I thought it was a remarkable piece of writing, and I'm curious to read more by Énard. I highly recommend it, and I hope you enjoyed this review, and thank you for watching.